Hi, it's Sifa. I'm gonna tell you guys the story about the first time when I was in the hospital, and this was when I was 14 years old in at a public hospital in southern Louisiana near my house. And basically what happened there, because a lot of crazy shit went down there. So basically, leading up to this hospitalization, I had been self-injuring for about 6 months, and I'd been starving myself and super depressed, but my parents really had no idea. My best friends didn't even know what was going on. No one knew what was going on at all. All that they knew is that I was failing out of high school, which was really out of character for me because I was usually a really good student. In late January, my parents decided to send me to the school's guidance counselor so they could see, like, maybe if something was wrong with me. And, that was on a Wednesday, and I talked to the counselor, and it was my first time ever even talking to a professional about my feelings or my problems. And, I ended up telling the counselor that I had plans to kill myself the summer before that. And, he sent me back to class, and then I got called back to the front office, and my mom was checking me out, and I was like, why are you checking me out? And she took me home, and she showed me this paper, and it said, your child has been expelled from school due to, and then it had circled in ink, suicidal ideation. And so basically, they wanted me to get, like, a psychological evaluation before coming back to school. So what happened is that, I think it was that same day, I went to a psychiatric facility, no, just like a counseling center, like a public counseling center, and I met with a therapist there, a psychologist, and they asked me like a billion of questions, and I told them all this stuff that I'd been going through, and they thought I was schizophrenic, because like I always had these like imaginary friends and stuff, and so they diagnosed me with schizophrenia, and asked me if I wanted to go to the hospital or not. And I was like, hell yeah, I want to go to the hospital. I don't know why, but I just really wanted to go. And they were like, well, you should show your parents your cuts. And I was like, no, are you crazy? Like, why would I show my parents? And they were like, okay, whatever. So, my parents drove me to the hospital, and we got to the waiting room, and it was just really, like, it was very surreal, obviously. And I remember there was this man in the waiting room who was just going batshit crazy. He was like screaming and like fighting, and there were people like having to hold him down. And my parents were just like terrified. They were like, what is going on here? Because they had, it was like a huge shock to them. So then a nurse comes to walk me back, and she took me from my parents, and we left the waiting room, and we went out into this like courtyard. And I just remember how like beautiful and bright it was outside and how green everything was. And I remember that I felt like I had finally escaped my parents, and that I was no longer controlled by them anymore, and that I could be on my own finally and not have to live with them and stuff. And I just remember looking at the buildings, because it was this courtyard with the buildings all around it of the different offices and facilities. And I just remember looking through the windows and thinking like, and they were all barred, all barred windows. And I just remember thinking, like, what is going to happen to me? Like, what have I gotten myself into? But I was really excited. I was really excited because I felt like finally I could have some relief from all the pain that I'd been under. So, I got in to the ward, and the first thing they do is strip search me. So they take me into the bathroom, and they make me take off all my clothes, and they look all over me, and they counted every single one of my scars and drew it on a picture where my scars were. And they searched me, and they searched all my stuff, put me through a metal detector, gave me a drug test, and put me on suicide precautions. And what suicide precautions mean is that you have to be within visual range of a nurse at all times, so they can always be watching you. So basically, I had to sleep in the hall, in the middle of the ward. I couldn't even sleep in a room because they couldn't be watching me then. So I was sitting in the day room, and all of a sudden, the adolescent girls came in. And they came in a single file, and they were completely silent. And I remember looking at them and just thinking, like, like, who are these people? And, like, I was so scared and excited at the same time. That night, I I got ready for bed, and I would just do like random crazy stuff sometimes. And so like somebody had left their box of toiletries in the bathroom that night, and I went in there and I like licked every single one of them. I don't know why, I just wanted to do something weird because I felt like it. And then somehow they like left me with a pencil, which is like bad because you're not supposed to leave suicidal people with pencils because they can like stab themselves. And I was like, maybe I should stab myself in the heart. And I was like thinking about it because I was laying in my bed in the middle of the hallway. And, you know, the nurses were like doing their paperwork or whatever. They didn't really care or whatever. But, and then I finally fell asleep. And then I was woken up in the middle of the night by the sirens ringing, code blue, code blue, code blue. And I heard all these running footsteps come running down the hall past my bed. And all these doctors and nurses and people in business suits and people came running from everywhere. And they ran through the adolescent girls ward into, like near the adolescent boys ward. And I heard them saying like, oh my god, he's lost it. He's, in the back hall. He's escaped. He's masturbating. And I was like, oh my god, like what is going on? And apparently there was some kind of like crisis with one of the boys. And, so that was my first night in the psych ward, was a code blue, strip searched, all that fun stuff. So then I was finally moved into a room after a few nights, and these were my roommates. My roommates were Joy. Joy was, I don't know, probably my favorite person there, because she was kind of like my protector, because it was a dangerous place in the psych ward. You know, there's fights all the time, it's dangerous. And she was really, really tall and athletic. I mean, she was basically a guy. She was a female to male transgender. So, I don't know, I guess I should call him a he, but I don't know. You know, he was very handsome and charming, and he would tell, like, really wild stories about growing up in the projects in New Orleans, like, all this crazy stuff had happened to him, like, he'd been in, like, gangs and stuff, and, like, and he was only, like, 16 or 17, and he was, like, you know, and he was in for anger management. He would always, like, punch the walls, and he would, like, break the bones in his hand and have to go to the doctor all the time. And then he would, like, you know, mope about it, and we're like, come on, you did that to yourself, like, don't be ridiculous. But he was kind of, like, he was really cool. And then my other roommate was, Jenny. And Jenny was an anorexic, goth girl, and she was a lesbian. And she did some really weird stuff, kind of like I did, except way crazier. Like, she would, like, torture animals and stuff. I don't know why. Because she was a really nice girl. Like, I don't know what the deal is. Like, she was a really nice girl and, like, really caring and loving, but she would, like, put a hamster on a string and, like, tie it to a fan and, like, all this ridiculous stuff. And I remember she used to always, like, draw pictures, and one time she drew a picture of me, like, dying. Like, me, like, dancing around and then tripping and dying. And I put it on my wall. And I ended up getting in trouble for it, because they, like, called, like, a special meeting just because, like, I had drawn a picture depicting my suicide or something. It was so funny. And I was like, I didn't even draw that. I was like, thank you for complimenting my drawing skills, though, because I cannot draw. And, yeah. She would also do things like, she would drink shampoo, and she would, she smuggled in razor blades, and she would, like, smuggle in marijuana and, like, eat it straight. And then she would always, like, get candy bars and, like, just throw them up because she was bulimic or, you know, dealing with an eating disorder. And then, it was just the three of us for a while living in there. And then after a while we got Annie. And Annie was a bisexual girl who ended up developing a crush on me, which was creeped the hell out of me because back then I was, like, you know, like, I was really, like, insecure about myself and I was, like, straight and, like, you know, straight edge and normal, whatever, you know. And she would always try to, like, kiss me, and it would, like, scare the hell out of me. And I remember when she came in, she had these cuts all over her arms. And, like, all of her arms were just completely scarred up. But, they weren't, like, bad cuts, though. They were just, like, you know, small cuts. So, it's almost like people were like, oh, she just did it for attention or whatever, you know, but who knows. The other girl that was there, she had to stay in her own room because she was, actually known for, like, being overly sexual in inappropriate ways with people, so she had her own room to herself. Her name was Taryn, and she was really cool too. She had pink hair, and she had these, like, weird, I don't know what the deal was. If somebody knows what this is, tell me. She had this weird birthmark on her face, and it went down her face, like, right there, and when she got upset, it would turn red. Like, I'm not even kidding you, and it looked like blood dripping out of her cheek, like, dripping out of her lips, and it would turn bright red. And then she had another one, like, somewhere else on her face. But it was some kind of birthmark that would change colors, and it was so weird. So, like, I always, like, called her, like, vampire or whatever. She would do stuff like flash people. She would like wear like a jacket with a bra under it and just like flash the staff, and like she would always do like sexy dancing and like try to hook up with the guys, and she was always getting in trouble for like sexual stuff. So the first thing that happened when I moved in is that Joy and Taryn started dating. And so what would happen during quiet time is that Taryn would hide under my bed, and then whenever the nurses like checked on us and like let us go to sleep or whatever, she would come out under the bed, and she and Joy would like make out and like be bad the whole time. And it was kind of amusing to us, to me and Jenny. Joy would get in trouble for a lot of stuff, like for being violent, you know, because she was very angry. Like one time we got this new girl, and the new girl like stole Taryn from Joy, and so Taryn and the new girl were dating, and Joy was like so pissed off about it that Joy like actually decided to beat up the new girl. And what happened is that like Joy was in session, and she came back into the day room where we all sat, and the new girl was sitting in the back of the room behind the couch. And Joy comes running in the room, jumps over the couch, like uses it to launch up in the air, and lands a punch right in her face. And it was just like, it was crazy. We all got in trouble because supposedly we goaded her on, which is complete bullcrap, because we didn't even have time to say anything before Joy ran in there and beat her like in the face. Like we didn't have time to even react. It happened so quickly. We also developed like secret codes that we would talk with. Like we'd have secret keywords, because we weren't allowed to talk about like things like self-injury, you know, death, sex, drugs, or other things like that. Or like anorexia. We couldn't talk about things like that. They wouldn't allow us. And so we came up with like secret keywords, and we would talk in our like secret, and we talked in sign language too, so that they couldn't understand us. There was a guy that I was really good friends with, and he always like wanted to date me, and it was kind of weird because he was totally gay. And I was always like, why do you want to date me? You're gay. And he would get really mad about it. And I guess one time I pissed him off too much because he tried to beat me up. And if Joy hadn't been there to hold him back, because remember, Joy was like huge. She was like really tall and really buff, you know. She held him back, and I don't know what I would have done if she hadn't been there, because we were just like walking back from class. So I almost got beat up for calling a guy gay, which was stupid, I know. I was stupid when I was 14. We all go through stupid periods. Let's see, there was also the time that Jenny told Taryn to cause a code blue. Code blues are psychological emergencies, and what happened is that we were just all sitting in the day room minding our own business, like playing cards or whatever, and all of a sudden Jenny looks at Taryn and she's like, cause a code blue now. And what does Taryn do? Taryn jumps up, gets on top of the table, and starts stripping her clothes off and dancing like a stripper. Everyone flips out and starts laughing hysterically, and the nurses are like, go to your rooms right now! Everyone go to your rooms! And then they call off the sirens going, code blue, adolescent girls ward, code blue, adolescent girls ward. And we're all in our rooms, and we're like looking out and trying to see what's going on. And after a few minutes, like we see this like procession of people come walking down the hall, and then we see, like, they have Taryn wrapped up in a burrito wrap, like, literally wrapped up like a burrito in this big, like, kind of straitjacket thing. And she's like frothing at the mouth almost, and she's, like, gritting her teeth, and her eyes are, like, bugging out, and she's, like, screaming. And they're hauling her down the room, and they put her in restraints and gave her shots of, like, we call it booty juice, you know? But I think it's, like, Haldol or something, or, I don't know, maybe Geodon. But, she was in restraints all night. And then Taryn also tried to run away one time and got, like, squished by a large man. I guess the last momentous thing that happened was something that I did that was really stupid. I decided to come up with this awesome idea of, we were at the Valentine's dance. We had a Valentine's dance with the children that were in the hospital. There were children in the hospital. And I told Taryn that we should tell the little girls that we were witches. And so what does Taryn decide to do? She decides to tell them that we're like Satanists and that like we're gonna curse them and stuff, which is not at all what I intended. And so these little girls get completely hysterical, and we all get put like in, you know, we all get like disciplinary actions taken against us because of it. It was just horrible. Like, pretty much I took the whole blame for it because I felt so bad about it. But, yeah. Also, I live in southern Louisiana, and I was in the hospital over Mardi Gras. So on Mardi Gras, we actually had a freaking parade in the hospital, like outside. And we had everybody in the entire hospital was there. I'm talking hundreds of people, because this was a state hospital, so we had hundreds of people in the hospital. And we all stood out along the road in the hospital, because the hospital was like a little city. It had like a barber shop, a dentist, a store, you know, a restaurant, everything. Little houses for the doctors to live in. And they put floats. We had floats. And from our ward, we had a queen of the adolescent girls and a king of the adolescent boys. And they were dressed in like fine, the girl was wearing like a ball gown and the boy was wearing like a suit. And they were in a little float, and they were throwing little beads and candy and stuff. Oh my goodness, it was so much fun. And I remember thinking that like they put the king and queen's name on the sign to the hospital, and I was like, thank God I wasn't the queen, because they would have put my name on there, and I have a really unusual name, and so everybody would have been like, oh my God, that's her, you know, because it was in my hometown where the hospital was. And yeah. So basically I was there for about 2 months. The reason I was there for so long is because I did not want to leave. And they actually thought that my parents were like beating me because I didn't want to leave so bad. And they like always, you know, were questioning my parents and like, you know, making sure they weren't beating me or whatever. But the truth is that I secretly loved it there. Like, for the first time, I felt like people really accepted me for who I was, and I felt like understood, and I felt like I could talk to people without being judged. And I told them that if they sent me home, I would probably hurt myself again. And I remember them telling me, Sifa, you never ever have to hurt yourself ever again. Just don't forget that. And they sent me home. And unfortunately, I immediately started hurting myself again, but that's beside the point. Basically, at that hospital, it was all good memories. All the nurses and all the staff just loved us so much, and they treated us so well. And they really treated us like their own children, and I just have so many good memories about that. And there was a lot of bad stuff that happened, but I kind of liked it, I guess, for some reason. But anyway, going to the hospital is not scary. Especially when you're a kid, because when you're a kid, they want to treat you well, and they want to make it as decent of an experience as possible for you. So anyway, that's my story about my first hospitalization when I was 14. Bye, guys.